Okay guys, so we are off to our hold on. We're off to our sunflower field, which is right next to us. And now obviously you can see out here is the sun, and you know the sunflowers are pointing kind of in the wrong direction, and obviously we're out in the open sun here. But I'm just gonna drive around the sunflower field because I'm looking for kind of trees that look like this over here that will block out the light from our sunflowers. So I think we can turn down here, and we've got our little model sitting in the back of the car. Hello darling. Okay, so you can see here our sunflowers actually pointing in the wrong direction, which is kind of strange. I always thought sunflowers actually faced the sun, but yeah, I know. So it looks like their backsides are towards towards the sky. But we're gonna drive around this little area here through this little industrial estate, and I'm gonna look for the side of the sunflowers that don't have light on them. So I'm going to be looking for my open light light patterns, which is down here somewhere, isn't it darling? And we'll show ahead here, and we'll go down this little road, and we're going to do some exploring through here. But this is kind of crazy because I'm going to use these buildings and trees and everything that's over here to block out my light on the field. So if you've got sunflowers, look for areas like this here. So you can see here that we're all sitting inside of the shaded areas. All of these sunflowers have got themselves facing the other way. So there is our sunflowers right down there. And I think we've got a few minutes still. And we can get ready and just chill out. And I'm going to show you guys some crazy equipment that we'll use in a minute. See you in a second. So guys, this is one of the cameras that I'll use today. This is a very old Nikon D70s. There we go. And on this camera is a 50mm 1.8 lens. Okay. And inside the bag over here is one of my other old lenses, a very old 80 to 200mm lens. Okay, this is a push-pull. Let's have a look over here, and I'm going to shoot those two lenses out in our sunflower field right over here. Sun is still up high, as you can see, very high in the sky. And as I go around, around this corner, almost tripped on the sunflower, and you can see that we've got sun high up in the sky here still. And we've got a few minutes before it starts to come down and starts casting longer shadows across the field here. It's starting now. The back end of the sunflower field is already starting to disappear in shade. So I might just try to cruise over that way in the meantime. And we'll have Amy out here in the sunflowers in about 10 minutes or so. Right now, I'd say we're roughly about 3 hours before sundown. Let me just come across here, and I think within maybe 5 minutes or so I'll be able to grab some shots over here. I'm going to show you guys now. So as I walk closer to the shaded area of our sunflowers, you can see that the sun is actually going behind that tree line there. Okay, so as I go further over here, you'll see that these sunflowers are marvelously in shade. Okay, and for whatever reason they're not actually pointing towards the sun, which is interesting. Okay, so we've got lovely blue skies here, lovely yellow sunflowers, and you can see now there's my shadow right there. It's nice long extended shadows. Okay, so I reckon probably in about 5 minutes time, maybe even less, that shadow is going to extend across the field. And remember in the other tutorial about Amy and the poppies, I told you about farmers having that line of trees. There's that line of trees here in this case. So that's what I'm using here to block out the light across the field here. In fact, in this time that we've been chatting, that shadow line is actually fallen forward to around about here now. And that's going to be pretty cool. So we've got some bees on here check that out. And we will go and get Amy prepared, and we'll talk about the colors of what Amy's got on, and we'll see you in the next few moments. Ciao for now. Right guys, so as I said before, we were waiting for that sun just to get down a little bit lower behind that tree line, which it has, and now everything is in a nice shaded area, and we've got lovely Amy out here. Of course, as you come in here, you can see how we've planned the colors here again. Okay, so we've got a very nice check stripe shirt and plain jeans. Okay, and we've got a nice little blue hairpiece over there, and that contrasts very well with the lovely yellows of the sunflowers.
And don't forget the glasses.
And of course the glasses, just sort that out. And we're going for this really retro 60s kind of vibe here with your shades, and we're just going to make sure that these sit actually straight on your head. It's not going to be slanting off. Actually it is at the moment, so something like that. Okay, and like I said, very retro style as well. Nikon D70s camera and a 50mm 1.8 lens, and we've got great light. So let's go to town and capture some beautiful photos of Amy. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Gorgeous, gorgeous, super. Yeah, bring it out here. Let's move that focus point here. Super sausage, super sausage. Lovely, darling. Looking up over here, sausage. And let's get that little flower pointed more, sunflower a little bit more pointed towards us. Okay, and over here, darling. See if I can get some of that sun coming through the background there. Okay, gorgeous. Right here, darling. Over here, sausage. Okay. Give us a little bit more of the sunflower pointed towards daddy, a little bit. Yeah, okay, something like that. And come in nice and cutesy to it, yeah? Okay. Lovely, lovely. Right, so what we're going to do is just move back a little bit into the sunflowers here, okay? And what you're going to do is bring it up nice and close to your head like that. And I want you just to bring it in. Just bring your hands nice and cutesy in, okay? And just get that hair out of your eyes. And what we'll do is bring it up, bring it in nice and cute, bring it up closer to your cheeks, and even tilt your head a little.
There's a V on it.
There was a V on it, I know. Okay, chin up, darling, chin up. Chin up, okay. I think let's get rid of the glasses because they actually sit a bit skew on your face at the moment.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. From one angle they were fine. They're coming nice and close here.
Yeah, like this.
Hey, yeah, why not? That's cool. Yeah, excellent, excellent. I'm going to try and get some of the sun coming up behind here. It's got beautiful natural light here. Oh, gorgeous, darling. Gorgeous, gorgeous. Hold it there, hold it there, hold it there. Perfect, perfect. Let's see if I can get some of that. Yeah, actually, you know, turning to your side was great. So go pop out to the side like that and have it facing up, and bring your arms up like that, gently underneath that one there, cusp it there, okay? And looking at that, yeah, perfect. Don't move, don't move. Okay, darling, gorgeous, gorgeous. Okay, look at the sunflower. Okay, perfect. Okay. Bloop, bloop. I want to almost bring it up more into this side here, and we're going to look up towards you. Go away. Whatever that was.
It smells
up,
nicely.
Up. Hey?
It smells nicely.
Smells nice, yeah? Okay, chin up here, darling. Okay, just tilt the head like that. Bring the sunflower up and get your eyes nice and wide open towards me here. But we need to make sure that we're getting a sunflower just there. Okay, eyes up here now. Okay. Okay, gorgeous. I'm going to change up this lens quickly. Okay, so the next lens is a very old push-pull lens. It's almost like a shotgun, something like that. So this is one of my old lenses, 80 to 200, and I'm going to be zooming it out to 200mm and shooting it f2.8 on a crop sensor. The other crazy thing is, if you can see this over here, this is crazy. It's only a 6-megapixel camera, and I haven't got a big card in here. I think it's 128 gig, and you guys know usually that might be about a 1,000 shots or 1,200 shots. We've got 5,400 shots we can take with that single card. That's crazy. Okay, let's see. Let's make this magic happen. All right, darling. There you go. Gorgeous. I have to be a little bit further away since this is a crop sensor camera. But let me zoom in. Okay, darling. Is that? No. No, that wasn't. Okay, try. Okay, I think that, what's the name was there? Contilla. Okay, darling. Gorgeous, gorgeous. Give us some poses there. Give us some crazy poses there. Lovely ones, darling. Awesome, awesome. Nah. Let me see if I can zoom this out to 200, yeah? Okay, gorgeous, 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 gorgeous. We're going to try that with the camera in a moment. Okay, yeah, perfect, darling. Wow, that's cool. I like that, I like that. Yeah, excellent. Okay, let me just move myself a little back. That's brilliant, darling. Wow. Okay, you know what? When you did that with your hair, that was beautiful. And you can look at the sunflower. Yeah, perfect. Just, yeah, excellent, darling. Wow, super. Oh, even with this, yeah. Well, we've got 5,000 odd photos we can take, yeah? Oh, lovely, darling. Let me see if I can move back a little bit here. See a bit more half a body shot. Okay, darling. Sorry? Okay. You know what? If you move a little bit back, or maybe, yeah, a little bit back, you've got the sunflower that's right next to you. You can kind of hold on to that one as well if you like. Yeah, that one right next to you. You can bring it in. Okay, gorgeous, darling. Yeah, just play with it there for a second. Oh, lovely, darling. Love it. That's good, that's good. It's weird, I've only literally got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 focus points here. It's mental. Oh yeah, lovely. Yeah, cutesy, cutesy, cutesy. Okay, I'm gonna see if I can get a half body shot here. Right, and 1, 2, 3, yeah, perfect, darling. Can you give me eyes straight up over here? Lovely. Okay, and what you can do is, yeah, just play around there, just looking at it there for a second. Gorgeous, darling. That's it, yeah, perfect. Yeah, just putting that leg up there a little bit. Yeah, excellent, excellent. Oh, gorgeous light. Super, super. I'm gonna come in a little bit closer. Yeah, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, oh, I love that, I love that. See if I can get the sun in the background as well. Okay, keep it there, darling. Don't move. Got to tell this camera where to go with the focusing. Itchy. Itchy. Oh, you're stunning, darling. Stunning. Colors on you, so gorgeous. Bring the sunflower closer. Yeah, something like that. And can you put your hand on your hair for a second after you've, yeah, just bring it down slowly. Yeah. Hold it there. Oops. Where the heck are you going? Now we got our next little prop, and if you guys have been following us for the last couple of years, you'll know that there's that session called Keeping an Eye on You, where we had this camera, and I think Amy was 3, I think. No, you were 3 when you had that, when you were looking through. 4? All right, well, it's back again. Okay, what we're gonna do is, well,
4 versus 9.
4 versus 9. Right, you'll just
Next time I'll do it at 14.
What we're going to do is, in this case here, we're just going to hold it like you're a photographer, yeah? And what we'll do is just hold it up like that.
Next time we'll do it at 14. After 5 years
14 again, yeah.
Because 4 and after.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to change out this one here. So, well, you want another one with a camera in 5 years' time. And you'll be 14. That's correct. What I'm going to do is we'll switch back to this little 50mm 1.8.
How the heck does this work?
It doesn't. Okay. Yeah, actually, yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay. Photographer versus photographer. Okay. Let's catch the sunflowers in the back here. Can you come forward a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, stop. Right. Okay. You know what, keep it down low so I can see your face as well. So just, yeah, kind of like that. Okay. Yeah. Actually, perfect. Hold it like it and bring your eyes up over here. Beautiful, darling, beautiful. Okay, there's my gorgeous girl. She's going to be a photographer as well one day, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That'll be my hobby.
Okay, looking down gently like that. That's beautiful. What we do is, can I bring you back a little bit? Step back if you can possibly into that little patch there. And I'm going to try and line your head up. With the... you leave that there. You just pick up the camera. And we'll just try and bring that around your shoulders. So, okay, so the way you would press this, and then I liked it when you were holding the little, yeah, just like that. Okay, cool. Right, darling. Yeah, bring that back.
2mm, as you always say.
Okay, eyes up here, darling. Okay, gorgeous. We're going to pretend taking a photo of the sunflower. Yeah, go for it. So you're going to stand to the side, facing the sunflower. And you know what? Maybe we'll take this strap off here quickly.
Ow.
It's gorgeous, lovely, darling. Wow. I like that. Looking here. Fantastic. Let me just come in closer. It's just here. More here. Okay, wait. Right, 1, 2, 3. Whoa. I think your hair needs to be around the other side towards the camera, okay?
Just looking at black.
Yeah, I know, you're looking at blackness.
I'm just not looking at my eye.
You should be. Yeah, you know what? Okay, so what we'll do is turn yourself a little bit this way. Okay, like we did that time. It was, no, you had your, I know it's not really how you looked, but
No,
you had it on this here, and you had that eye open. Okay, turn yourself a little this way. No, I mean your body, upper body, and then looking here. Oh, I can't see your eye now. You have to turn your body a little bit this way. You know what? Can you come inside here? Possible. Can you move a bit closer towards the sunflower, just with your upper body? And yeah, you know, block that eye, the other eye instead.
It shouldn't be like that because here I press.
Yeah.
Wait, I'll check it.
You need to make sure it's right.
And put it here. We'll go to auto. Whatever it is.
Explaining how to use the camera, yeah?
Yes. Go to some plus thing.
Right, folks, we are back in the studio, and up on our screen here, we've got some more of the out-of-camera results from the shoot. Now, just to cover this again, we were shooting with the Nikon D70s from 2005, together with two other very old lenses, the 50mm f1.8 Nikon lens, the Nifty 50 as it's commonly known as, and then of course the zoom lens which I used was the 80-200 push-pull pump action 80-200 f2.8 lens. That's also from the 80s. Now, the point of the shoot was to demonstrate that you can get decent results with old gear. Now, this is a 6-megapixel camera, and I'm not saying that gear doesn't matter, right? That's not the point here. What I'm trying to demonstrate is that there are other vitally important factors that influence our results, and that comes down to my 3 fundamental elements to my portraits, or portraits in general. All right. The first thing that I'm looking out for is great light. I'm out there looking for good light that's going to be directional. It's going to make my eyes of my subjects come alive. It's going to be soft and diffused. That's the type of light that I'm looking for, and that's the type of light that I find day in and day out at different times of the day in many different locations. Okay, the second fundamental, which is also critical, is shooting for distraction-free frames. I'm trying to do everything I can at camera level to minimize the distractions in an image. Okay, I'm looking all around my frame. I'm studying my frame. These are instantaneous decisions. My eyes are moving rapidly around my frame, looking at things that could potentially throw a person off the main subject of the frame. I'm trying to simplify my frames, and I'm trying to get rid of unwanted clutter in my images. Okay, this forms a huge part of the process. All right, I'm either trying to get it right at camera level, and if I didn't get it right there, I'm trying to crop in a way that is gonna get the attention going straight to where I want it in the frame. The third fundamental, which is absolutely critical, is keeping the colors simplified. All right, I'm looking for simplified color palettes. I'm looking to use color theory to strengthen my composition. In this case over here, as I said before, we are looking at the complementary colors. That is the blues complementing the warmer yellow sunflowers. So let's get back into Lightroom. Right, folks, we are now inside of Lightroom, and what we're going to do is we're going to dive deep into the results that we got from each lens. And the first thing that I noted between the two lenses was a difference in contrast. Okay, so we've got a 50mm f1.8 shot here up on our screen. Okay, I was shooting at 1/640th of a second at f1.8, so we're shooting wide open. Let me just zoom in there, and we've got an ISO of 200. Now that's the lowest ISO on the D70s. Now you can see that we've got fairly sharp results wide open. It's as good as it's going to get for that particular lens. Okay, continuing over to this one over here, it's slightly softer over here, but I think what was happening is that I was trying to settle in with the AF of the D70s. Now the D70s, as you guys know now, is a camera that was released in 2005, okay? And it does have a little bit of a slower focusing system that I'm kind of used to. So I had to kind of time myself as to when I'm pressing the shutter, because sometimes I'd press the shutter before it's even properly acquired focus, and it'll take the shot anyway. So that did happen quite often, okay? Over here, going over to the next shot, it's still nicely in focus. So, you know, overall, I think the 50mm had quite a number of shots in focus. Now, there were times where it sort of swayed off focus, but that was a little issue with my timing and the camera's AF being a little bit slow to the mark, okay? The other thing that I noticed is that the 1.8 had a lot more contrast in it, okay, image-wise. Now, I'm going to bring up two images next to each other. We can have a look at this one and that one. Right, so both are taken with exactly the same white balance. So just make a note of that. And let me just hide some of these tabs away here. Right, so this side is a 50mm and this side is the 200mm. Okay, the 80 to 200mm f2.8. Now, there's a considerable difference in the depth of field here for obvious reasons. I'm shooting at 200, okay, or 200mm, and I'm at f2.8. All right, obviously over here, I'm at 50mm at f1.8. Okay, I'm getting a little bit more of the scene here, whereas over here, I'm seeing a more compressed view. And of course, these sunflowers are looking considerably bigger because we're kind of drawing in that background. And this is one of the other reasons I kind of love shooting with the longer focal lengths. Now, there's a marked difference in the contrast. Okay, look at Amy's eyebrows over here, or eyelashes rather. There it's sort of like hazy. It's not as dark over here as over here. The 50mm has got a little bit more micro contrast. But the most striking thing for me between these two images is the differences in colors. Okay, look at the difference over here. This is a lot cooler. This is a lot warmer. And I can assure you, both are shot at identical white balances. Okay, we can have a look at this. Let's scroll up here. Look at that, 6,800. And this image over here, let's just reset that, sorry, as shot, 6,800. Let me bring those two up there quickly. That that white balance wasn't correct. Let's just bring this up over here. Right, there we go. That's better. Right, so you can see that there's a considerable difference between the warmth of this image and that image there. It's almost as if this was taken with a cooler white balance, but that's not it. It's actually how the lens renders the scene. Okay, and this is one of the many key reasons I'm shooting with a set white balance. I'm setting in my white balance. I'm customizing the white balance to where I want it to be. But it's also teaching me one thing, to understand the nuances of color between two different lenses. Now, it's gotten a lot better these days. When you buy a range of Nikon lenses from the last couple of years, they all seem to render relatively the same. In this case over here, the 80-200 is rendering the scene a lot warmer. You can tell that by looking at all of this area over here. Look how warm that is. And this is exactly the same white balance, 6,800. We're shooting in exactly the same scene, okay? Compared to this one over here. Amy's skin tones look a lot cooler. There seems to be a little bit more of a magenta shift here. And I can see that the greens in the background here are more of a green color. Over here, they're more of a greeny yellow color, okay? And there's no changing light over here. It's exactly the same scene, okay? Minutes after each other, okay? So we can't even factor that down as being the issue between the two, because here it's in sequence. In fact, we can check the timestamp here. So 1958, and a few minutes later, 3 minutes later, 2003, okay? It's 2 minutes later, swapping those lenses. And this again is testimony to how different lenses render color, okay? And obviously this is old lenses, so there is going to be issues with UV coatings. Things happen over time to these lenses, but the two images over here, side by side, are giving us very different results. So we've got a choice over here when we shoot a series like this, and our lenses are very different in color rendition. We've got to make a decision. Do we cool this shot down or do we warm this one up? Now, for me personally, I'm liking the warmer tonalities of this shot, okay? I'm not so keen on these funky greens over here, but I'm liking the skin tone. So I'm thinking about this more from a logical point of view, looking at the main subject here, and I want her skin tones to be right. So I'm pretty happy with the warmer skin tones here. So that means that I could potentially start changing this image over here. So let's have a look where we're going to go with this. I think in this case over here, we might push this to 7,200 Kelvin, or maybe even 7,500 Kelvin. And that's going to give us a similar white balance to this shot here. Okay, you pay attention to this little area here. We've got the greens of those sunflowers, of the stems of the sunflowers. Now watch this to the warmer up one. There we go. This is a lot closer. However, the other little factor that we can't change here is the contrast difference, the micro contrast. Now I can bring up a little bit more micro contrast in this shot here. So I guess in a sense, yep, we could probably do this. We could alter the contrast just a tiny little bit, just to get Amy's eyelashes a little bit more darker, okay? So we're balancing up the two different contrast and color differences between these lenses, and we're creating a a color harmony across all of the images. They're not wildly different in white balance and contrast. Okay, so this is a base point over here that I'm working on. So I've said to myself, I want to work on the warmth that I got from the 80 to 200 over here and work it into the 50mm f1.8 shot. So there you guys can clearly see how much impact the two different lenses have in terms of color and contrast. Like I said, this isn't too much of an issue these days. I know that I shoot a lot with Sigma glass and they all seem to perform equally well in wide open apertures, and in the same scene they render the white balance and contrast and all of those things pretty well. Okay, I go into my shoots, I set a custom white balance, and that's where it's set. And if there are changes in light, or if I change a location, like go deeper into the shaded areas of a forest, it's at that point in time where I might make adjustments to the white balance. Okay, but the color rendition of all of the Sigmas that I've got in my kit now, as well as the Canon 200 f2 and 200 f1.8, they all pretty consistent in terms of color. Okay, all of the modern glass has got good coatings. They try and work on minimizing color casts as far as possible to give users a truer view and truer color of the images they are capturing. The older lenses, however, need a little bit more work. The UV coatings on these lenses are different. You know, obviously, these two lenses are quite old. The 80 to 200 that I'm using here, I've been using for the last 13 years. And prior to that, I guess other people have been using that lens too. One of the issues that I have got with that lens is a case of back focusing. Okay, it back focuses a lot. And I did miss quite a couple of shots with the D70s and the 80 to 200 combo, but I still kept things moving along and I still captured the images that I wanted. You guys can see how active I am. I let off a lot of shots. I let myself settle into the AF. It's not always timed well because sometimes I'll grab a shot quickly before the camera's even focused. For example, over here, I know for a fact that I prematurely pressed down on that shutter before it actually acquired the focus properly, and I missed the shot. Okay, I tried it again and it got a little bit better, and then I settled into the AF. Now, like I said, the 70 to 200 at the 200 mark is quite okay. At the 135 over here was a bit funky. Let me just go back here. 135 is where I had some issues with back focusing. Okay, you can see that it focused on the back hairs here rather than on her eyes. Okay, and the minute I zoomed out to the 200 focal length range, it got a lot sharper. So I left it at 200. Now, bear in mind, this is also on a crop sensor camera. And of course, it's a very low megapixel camera, 6 megapixel camera. Now, look at that shot. That is nicely in focus, okay? Coming onto this image over here, for example, we've got a lot more contrast going on over here. This is at 50mm 1.8. And then again, you can see that it missed focus a little bit. But again, like I said, I was probably in a hurry to press the shutter. And again, slightly soft focus there. And then when things slowed down, and I got myself in tune with the AF system. There we go. Okay. Slowing the shots down and then grabbing nice focus. Now, one of the other things that is prevalent with the 50mm at 1.8 is these highlighted areas over here. They start getting a little bit glowy. Okay. But let's be honest, it's still okay considering the age of the lens. Over here, you can see that glow on the outside of the camera. That to me isn't a major thing. It kind of adds to the aesthetic of our results. Over here, you can see in the shaded area that glow is slightly diminished there. Okay, over here out in the open, where the light is hitting the camera over here, you can see that there's a bit of a glow there. But compared to the inside over here, when we're in the shaded areas, that glow is sort of diminished there. And again, we've got some nice sharp focus. And this is probably also because Amy's out in the center of the frame here. She's in the center of the frame here, sorry. again over there. Looking at these ones over here, nice and crispy. Over here, nice and crispy. And, you know, quite a lot of those shots came out really, really nice with that lens. So overall, the 50mm f1.8 really, really nailed it in terms of the sharpness and contrast and color rendition. The 80-200, on the other hand, nice and warm. At the 200 mark, it was performing well, but going back into the 135s and 145s, it was a little bit more, I'd say, soft. I'm trying to increase the focal length over here. I'm at 160, and then I went full out at 200. And at 200, the performance was really nice. You can see here that for the most part, things started getting nice and crispy. Look at Amy's eyes over here. Going through all of these images over here. Nice and crispy at the 200 mark. Okay. Coming back to the 50mm, and you can immediately see there is that contrast and all that sharpness coming back slowly but surely. It's there. It's definitely one of those lenses, and it's a very cheap lens, folks. I mean, you could pick it up for like $50. It's hardly anything. Okay, here we go. Here's some nice close-ups of Amy over here, and a nice arrangement of those sunflowers right behind her. In fact, these are, or one of these is going to be what we'll focus on, what we'll focus on as an image edit today. But there you have it, folks. You know, nice, clean rendition here. The sharpness is acceptable here, and I'm also liking the contrast. Okay, we're going to deal with the colors over here. Still, I think the greens aren't where they should be, but I think that's down to the camera issues that we've got here in terms of color rendition. I'm used to my greens being nice and green, and I think this may be an attribute to what I'm used to. The D750, the greens and skin tones and everything on that camera is lovely. Coming back a little bit off subject here, but still to do with color. When I shot with the A7 III, I found that skin tones were quite yellow, and greens were quite yellow as well for that particular camera. The moment I switched over to the Sony A9, I found that those colors were right down my alley, and I don't have to do too much to the colors on the Sony A9 inside of Lightroom for starters. The other camera that I had little bits of hiccups with in terms of colors was actually the Canon R5. Okay, I had to build a whole profile for that camera, but this here is still very acceptable in terms of the colors. It's just that the greens have fallen away here. But we're going to have a look at the edit of this in a moment when I come into these settings here. Right, let's scroll down here. So this is the image that we'll work on today. And the very first thing that I'm going to try to do here is try to start working on some of the greens in the background, okay? And one thing that we can do here is that we've got the camera calibration tab right at the bottom here. When you scroll right down to the bottom here, it's currently on version 5. And then we've got a process over here, RGB, red, green, blue. Now I feel like the green channel here is a little bit funky. So I'm going to see if I can alter that greens here a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to push this over to the right hand side, and I'm going to try and alter those greens. I'm going to try and move it away from a yellowy green to more of the greens that I saw on location. And it seems like we've got a plus 20 here, or plus 15 actually. Let's go back to 20. Plus 20 seems to be doing it for me, okay? That's altering the green channel of this camera, giving us a better green rendition, okay? One of the things that we can do is go over to our HSL panel here. So we'll click on the little drop-down menu. And what we're going to do in this case over here is go to the hue, and then we're going to see if we can shift that hue a little bit here, okay? Also to the right a little. In this case here, you know what? I'm going to actually leave it there. I'm pretty happy there. I'm going to leave that there. What we can do though is we can increase the saturation here just a tiny little bit and pull down the luminance. I'm going to make it slightly darker. So it's going to give us the illusion that it's a little bit more contrast here. If that's even a word, sorry. What we're going to do here is we're going to pump up the contrast just a little bit over here as well. Okay. One of the things that I am noticing when I did that RGB shift here, when I was down here with the green primary, it starts affecting Amy's skin tones. There's a little bit more magentas creeping in here. So we need to just back this off a little bit here. Okay, I'm going to push it back to maybe +10. Okay. I'm just being a little bit concerned over Amy's skin tones. I don't want those changing because I'm kind of happy where those are. So we'll shift the green primary channel on this camera setup to +10. All right, let's go back to the top here and look at the saturation. I may bring back the saturation here a little bit. Okay, there we go. And I'll leave it at that. One of the things that I'm going to do here before I go and do anything, I've actually done that already, is come in and crop it. Okay, so I'm going to just crop out the lights at the top there and come in with a tighter crop on Amy. Now I'm going to try and include as many other sunflowers on the top here to fill up our frame. I'm going to keep Amy centralized in the frame over here, and the compositional value here is framing Amy in the center of the frame because we've got this sunflower here, this sunflower over here, and that one over there. Okay, playing with the threes. Okay, there's always threes in photography. The rule of thirds, the rule of threes over here. That little triangle that we've got going on there. Okay, the other thing that you'll notice is that we really getting our subject interactive with our environment. I've got Amy doing something with her hands all the time. Whether she's holding the glasses, whether she's holding her hair, whether she's holding onto the sunflower, okay? There's always something happening, okay? Keeping those arms active, creating that shape and dimension and that dynamics to Amy's body stances. Look at this one over here quickly. Creating that little triangle in the pose here, okay? When we go over to this particular image over here, we've got that little tilt of Amy's head. It's not much, okay? I asked Amy to tilt over and she started doing that. That's a little bit straight over here. Her hand was still going down. And then she gave us that little cutesy pose. And sometimes it's those prompts that gives us those results. Hey, Amy, give us that little cutesy pose of yours, that little girly pose. Even that voice command, you can hear girly, all right? Creating that mood, creating that connection with the subject. That's key, folks. It's not just about the lenses and the light and the colors and all that. It's that actual interaction with your subjects as well. And that forms that part that's going to make your client happy. They're going to see good light. They're going to see good colors. They're going to see good composition. But they mainly looking at themselves. Are they happy? Are they engaged with the photographer? Is it a happy photo? Is it a moody photo? All of those emotions go into it. Customers are going by emotions rather than the technical. We're going by the technical, then the emotions, unless, of course, you do it the other way around. If you've got your technicals down, if you've got your editing down, if you've got your composition down, if you've got your colors down, then you are now in the world of creating that communication, that harmony, that emotion, and that's the next level. That's that next layer, okay? So we go through all of these phases as photographers, to be honest. You know, we start off, we take our cameras out, we practice on shooting a chair, shooting our lens cap, shooting out a window and discovering our exposures are all overexposed. We go through all of these steps as photographers, all of these little building blocks, okay? So, you know, you might start realizing, oh, this is how exposure works. Oh, this is how the ISO works and the shutter speed works this way. And now I'm getting decent exposures, okay? You might have a decent exposure, but it's a poorly framed composition. There's lots of distractions. There's lots of bad light. There's all of those components there. There's lots of distracting elements. There's lots of distracting colors in your frame. Okay, then you start learning to get past that, and then you realize, okay, I'm shooting portraits now, and I'm putting my subjects in very bad light.
okay, and I'm having to fix that in post. Then your next learning curve is learning how to find good light for your subjects. Then it's learning to how to style your subjects. Then it's learning to how to pose your subjects. You've got all of these working elements, guys, that you got to learn through. And this is what I'm hoping to do and hoping to teach you guys through these tutorials. So you can skip all those practicing sessions, okay? Skip past all of the practice. Get right down into this level that we're talking about now. Getting our location spotted out. Knowing that light is great. Knowing that we are interacting with our subjects. We're creating those poses. We're creating that smiles or those smiles. We're creating that mood and emotion and that connection, that happiness, okay? And this goes right the way through. That travels right the way through to whoever is going to view that image, all right? You guys looking at this image of Amy, you know, this is going to sound crazy. When I'm working on these family shoots and I've got them smiling and doing these crazy things, I'm sitting here like a plum smiling. Sometimes Eva walks past my office here and she's going, "Why are you smiling?" And I'm like, you know, I'm just remembering what we were doing in the shoot and how we got that interaction with our subjects, okay? I'm just giving a way out example here. And that's how far our imagery reaches out to people, okay? I'm reliving that experience every time I'm going through an edit. I can remember what I was doing then. You know, I was barking like a dog. I was making a stupid joke. I was telling all the grandmas to show their teeth if they've got any. And those types of things, right? And they all come flooding back while I'm in the edit session. And I'm saying to myself, yeah, you know, this is why I love being a photographer. This is why I love doing weddings. This is why I love shooting children or families or doing these maternity sessions. You've got to put in that energy to create your work, okay? Everything is not about the technical, okay? You've got to feel the shot. You've got to feel that it's right. There's a lot of feeling. There's a lot of emotion. And this is why we get emotionally attached to our work. This is the reason why, folks. We put our heart and soul, and then when the next character comes along and goes, "Oh, I don't like that pose," or "I don't like that expression," and it hits us hard. You guys know it. You get that CC out there, okay? And this kind of leads me to this next little slot. If you're getting that CC from folks out there, okay, take it largely with a pinch of salt, but take the advice from those whose images, or take the advice from those that you look up to in the industry. Their advice is worth more in gold than Sally from around the corner who takes landscape photos and then she's trying to critique your portraits, okay? And I find this is the case for me. You know, I put out an image that I'm quite proud of, and then Susie Ann, who's a landscape photographer who's never picked up a camera to take a portrait of someone, goes, "Oh, I don't like that very blurry background." Well, I don't care. I don't care, Suzanne, or whatever your name is. I really don't care. This is my work. This is my expression. This is my way, okay? But you mustn't suffer from what they call the Dunning-Kruger effect, where everybody tells you you're absolutely wonderful, all your images are great, and in reality, it's not. Sometimes our closest friends and families will tell us our images are great, but when in reality, compared to the top photographers out there, they aren't that good. So you got to be honest with yourself in this trade as well. You got to know your limitations. You got to know where you got to improve. And this is why you guys have come to me. You know that you've got the ability to get out there to really make a go out of this business. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to be going on like this is one of those topics I could talk forever on. Let's get back to the editor. Sorry. Okay. So what I've done here is I brought in my crop a little bit, and I could probably bring it down a little bit more just to trim out that little bright spot there. And I can move over my composition. I actually want to keep in this leaf over here. I kind of like that. I might actually just introduce that. I'm going to take that out of post. But what I'm trying to do ultimately here is keep Amy in the central portion of our frame, okay? Over here, we've got those 3 sunflowers really framing Amy in the center and helping us with that composition. And then, of course, we've got the bumblebee floating around on our sunflower in the back there. Okay, let's go over here. The white balance, let's have a look at that. We're going to push that over to the 7500 Kelvin mark. I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, I'm going to bring down the highlights just a tiny little bit here. Nothing really extreme. Then I might lift up the shadows. Let's have a look and experiment here. Either we're going to lift them or we're going to push them back. In fact, I think I'm going to push them back just a tiny little bit over here. Okay. Whites, I'm going to give them a little bit of a boost over here just to get this general feel of this image nice and punchy. Okay. Let's see what happens with the blacks over here. We might go easy on the blacks there. In terms of the presence here, because we've got a much lower resolution image, these presence sliders are going to change somewhat. Now, you guys normally see that I push this back to like -10, but this is a far lower resolution image. And in this case over here, because of that, I may even push it back only to about -5, okay? We don't want to overdo it in this type of case, yeah, where we've got a lower resolution image. It affects the pixels a lot quicker, okay? So I'm happy with that there. Let's go back to the HSL panel here. I'm going to make a little bit more of an adjustment here again. Go back to the hue, and I'm going to adjust the greens here. I'm going to push them and make them a little bit more greener. There we go, okay? So on the 0 point over here, you can see that we've got a little bit of a yellowy green. If I push up the green to the left here, we're going to change the hue of the green. We're going to make the green a little bit more greener. And this is all happening inside of Lightroom, obviously, okay? So I'm pretty happy where that's going right now, okay? Now, I am going to scroll down and I'm going to juice the sharpness up here a little bit. I say juice the sharpness up over here. That sounds crazy. Anyway, I'm going to pump up the sharpness just a tiny little bit over here. Now, I'm going to be careful with all of these sliders because it's quicker at affecting a lower resolution image. Okay, look at that. I mean, just 20 on the slider has made a considerable impact here. It's bringing up the noise quite a bit here as well. And that, again, is a testament to the older gear being a little bit more noisier. So we can sort that out by bringing up the luminance over here a little bit. Let's, again, in small progressive steps over here. We're not going up to 20 like we normally do. We're actually just pushing it around the 10 mark here. That's more than enough for this resolution, okay? So I'm pretty happy where this is at the moment. Okay, what we're going to do is right click and we're going to say edit in Photoshop 2023, and you'll see this is going to open up like lightning, okay? And that's just due to the fact that the resolution on this camera is way, way low. I want to introduce you guys to a couple of tools here. Now, I've got a traditional way that I edit, as you guys know, but I want to quickly demonstrate, before I continue working on sharpness, I want to quickly demonstrate a little bit of software to you guys out there. And if you want to, you can go ahead and go and purchase it, or you can download a trial of it. It's called Topaz Sharpen AI. And I'm going to apply that to this image over here so you guys can see what it looks like, okay? Now, this looks nice and crispy as it is, okay? There is a little bit of a film of lightness over here. Like a film of softness rather, not lightness. There's a film of softness to the image, and that's just due to shooting at f1.8. But we can make this really, really shine if we want to. Let's go to Topaz Labs, Topaz Sharpen AI. I'm just going to open up this interface over here, and you can tell it to automatically select a sharpening model. Let's do that quickly here. It says out of focus, very noisy. Yes, it is a very noisy image, and we'll wait for this to load over here. Watch what happens. Okay, give it a moment to load up. It says updating, and oh, look at that. Look at that sharpness, folks. That's insane. Look at the high detail in Amy's eyelashes that's come back. Look at the details on the sunflower over here. And the other thing that you'll notice is that we've got far less noise, okay? We've got some artifacting happening over in the corner over here, but what I could do is I can go in here and turn down the noise suppression, or I could choose a different model here that's not going to create that little issue over there. So we could go to out of focus normal, okay? And we'll let this run its algorithm here, okay? And we'll see what the results are in a moment. Okay, this takes a considerable amount of computing power to do this, but everything is getting nice and sharp, okay? So let's have a look. Before and after. Before and after. Beautifully nice and crisp. And the great thing about this software is that it sharpens up while actually suppressing the noise, but it's doing this all from an AI perspective and artificial intelligence point of view, okay? That is now nice and sharp, okay? I can apply that to the image, okay? And it's going to run through its process, and we're going to have this beautifully sharp version of Amy there. Okay, so how am I going to do this without that software? Right, so we've got a nice sharp image of Amy right here. Okay, we can have a look at what we had here. There we've got a nice sharp image there, and it's also removed the noise, okay? But for those of you guys who don't have that bit of software, let's do this my way. All right, so Control J is the first point of call here. What I'm going to do now is go over to Filter, go to Other, then go to High Pass, okay? We've got it on a radius over here of almost 1 pixel. I'm going to bring this down to about half a pixel. And I'm going to press OK. And the reason I'm doing that is because this is a much lower resolution image. And then I'm going to go and change it to vivid light. Look at that. Okay. And I've still got a decent amount of control over the noise. Okay. Now I can obviously open up the filter menu here. Go to Camera Raw Filter. Right. Oops. We'll flatten that first. Then we go over to Filter, Camera Raw, and I can target that noise a little bit better. Okay. So we can go down to Detail, and then I can go to Noise, and then I can recover the noise a little bit. Now again here, only +10, and I'm working on that noise, bringing that noise ratio down. Let's bring it over to around about 15. And there it's acceptable for me. If there's still a little bit of grain there, that's absolutely fine, folks. Don't go mental, okay? Don't go mental on this noise reduction and try and clean up every single noise pixel, okay? Because remember, we also print these, and when you print them out, oh man, that's where you see these beautiful differences, okay? Right, so I just wanted to share that with you guys there in terms of bringing up the sharpness of these older lenses there, just by simply coming in, going to Filter, going to Other, going to the High Pass, and then creating a high pass layer with a much lower threshold, and then creating that sharpness. Okay, so let's have a look at this image all together here. We've got a few little evident distracting elements, one being over here. Let me just create a little blank space here, or blank layer, blank space. What am I talking about? Right. Let's make that red. And what we're going to do here is identify some of the areas of the image that I want to work on. Okay. So we've got that little area there. We've got that little distracting element there. We've got little spots on Amy's hand over here. These are macro distractions in my eyes, and it's stuff that I like to get rid of. That little crease in the neck there. And this little area here, there. Okay. This little piece of hair really got my attention right here, right off the bat. And those are some of the macro distracting elements. Okay. Now, when I go back out of the image here, one of the things that I am seeing here is that Amy's hand over here has got a different color. Okay, slightly different color. Let me just change the color of this as well. So we're going to look at color correcting this. Okay, color correcting the red in her cheeks, and we're going to try to create a better rotation from one color to another. You can see that Amy's tanned over here. So we're going to color correct the reds first, and then after that, we're going to try and get rid of these uneven tonalities. So we've got that little area there, which is nice. It's the redness of her cheek, but then it kind of abruptly stops over here. And then we've got the next color. So we're going to try to blend those areas into each other a lot better. I'm going to look at working on the eyes. Okay, that's another little area there. And you can see straight away from a small image like this, how much we can do to really get it shining. Okay, over here we've got a little bit of a glow there, but that's just the nature of that lens, and I kind of like that character. Okay, so let's get started over here. Oh yeah, sorry, the other thing that I'm going to do here is this doesn't look quite as blue as what I saw it on location. Okay, so I'm going to alter the blues over here a little bit more. Okay, I want to have that complementary color palette going on here, and I want it stronger. I want this to be a stronger representation of blue, and I think I'm going to do the same to her eyes. Okay, so the blues in the eyes, the blues of her top, complementing the yellows of the sunflowers. So that's kind of what we're going for in terms of the artistic nature of the edit here. Okay, I say artistic, I'm just talking about the basics really in terms of color. Okay, let's get rid of that layer and start working on those little distracting elements. I'm going to create another layer here, Control J on the keyboard, and what we're going to do is we're going to go to the spot hitting brush tool, and it's going to dab once over there. And you'll notice now and of late that I actually haven't been putting that pressure sensitivity on, because the little distracting elements that I do find in images are about they've got a uniform thickness, like this piece of hair here. So for example, if we take this hair out, I'm going to set my brush up to about just a little bit bigger than the hair. And then I'm going to go over the hair like that, okay? Whereas if I start using the pressure sensitivity, which I was in the past, and I press down, it's not having the same effect. I'm sometimes mispainting here. So let's just leave that alone, okay? We'll go back to our spot hitting brush tool here. And that means, you know, for little areas like this, I'm just simply adjusting the size of my brush according to the little distracting element that I do have. And it works out pretty nice, okay? Okay. Coming into these little marks over here on Amy's neck, we can go in and zoom in. And sometimes what I like doing here is going to the patch tool and then encircling that little wrinkle on the neck, and then just sampling from pixels just underneath it. Okay. And I like using the patch tool because it really tries to do a good blend of the colors and textures at the same time. Here we go. Okay. We're just coming in here and getting rid of those little distractions. Okay. Going into this little area over here. Oops. There we go. And you'll notice that I'm following the skin patterns here. Okay. If you've got those variations in the tonalities, we'll fix it up in frequency separation in a second, okay? Right, so going over to her face over here, a little spot there, a little spot here, a little spot there. There's only a few little spots here and there. And again, I just want to demonstrate some more software to you guys here that you might find useful. Okay, so I'm going to make a copy of this layer, and I'm going to demonstrate in the next bit of software that I am starting to introduce into my workflow here. It does speed up things quite substantially. So it's the Retouch for Me menu over here. and it's something called Retouch for Me Heal. And what it does is it analyzes your image very, very rapidly and picks up all of the little spots in someone's skin. So watch this. Okay, so before and after. In this case here, it's removed some of the little freckles that I like on Amy's face. So we're not going to use it in this case, but I wanted to show you that if you've got a subject that's got a lot of acne, this might actually help out with an instant edit. Okay, but in this case over here, I like to keep those little freckles on Amy's face. I think our major issue here is more to do with the imbalance of the tonalities of the skin. Okay, and we're going to tackle that in a moment. So we'll flatten this. And what we're going to do is run the frequency separation action here. So I'll press play here. And as you guys already know, that this breaks up my image into textures, tone corrections, and colors and tones right there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to tackle this area over here that I looked at before. So we'll go to colors and tones. Then I'm going to go over to my paintbrush tool. And I'm going to look for the mixer brush tool right here. Okay, we need to ensure that this is not blue, that it's actually clear. All right, so you might have to tap on it once to get it clear. You can also just make sure that this is maybe black or at least white. Okay, so wet is at 8%, load 75, mix 90, flow 100. And what we're going to do is we're going to adjust our brush to this area size over here. Okay, and we are going to try to mix those colors. We saw those inconsistencies of the skin tonalities there. Now be careful when you start brushing with this brush. If you see the color come through here, just make sure that you click and tap that on just to get rid of any colors on your brush. Same here, clean the brush. Okay, clean the brush all the time. So we're going to continue here, and I'm going to smooth out tonalities over here, like on the chin here, underneath this area here, that nice soft shadow. Okay, now remember I was telling you guys about the inconsistent skin tonalities. We've got some reds over here, and you know the skin tones over here are dark compared to this area here. So let's blend those in a little bit better. Watch the magic happen. As I'm going in circles here, I'm blending in those colors, blending in those reds. I'm getting a better rotation from one color to another. Okay, and I'm gonna pause there for a second. Okay, because what I want to do is Amy got quite tan here. So what I might do first here, before I continue this little process, although we almost did it here completely, I'm just going to flatten the image here, and then I'm going to go over to the layers panel here, and then go to hue and saturation. I'm going to create a hue and sat adjustment layer, and then I'm going to go over to reds. Then I'm going to ramp this all the way to the top, get a good selection of what is red in my image. At the moment, this is the color range that Photoshop is looking at. What I need to do to get absolute reds is shift the entire collection over, or entire sample area over, and where you see the reds start coming in as greens, that's where those reds are in our subject's tonalities. So round about there is where the maximum reds are in the image. Okay, in the skin tones rather. So let's back that off there, round about there. Now I'm going to invert that mask and then paint over the areas of Amy's skin that are still red. So make sure I'm in white mode over here with a white brush, painting on a black mask, and then make sure that my brush is set to the brush tool, not the mixer brush tool. And I'm going to paint over the red areas on Amy's skin alone. And I'm making sure that I'm not obviously painting over her lips, because we want the lips to stay red. What I'm attempting to do here is get a sample of the red colors in Amy's face. And those reds at the moment are being displayed as bright green here. Okay, so we can get a visual aid of the absolute reds in the tonalities of my subject, skin tonalities of my subject. Over here, you'll start getting used to it, folks. You'll start being able to see this straight away, where those absolute reds are. On the fingertips here, okay? Be careful not to paint over the fingernails because obviously we don't want to change the hue of the fingernails, okay? So here we go. Now all we need to do now is just drop this back to about plus 8 or 10, and we're getting rid of those little red tonalities in the skin, okay? Here we go. And this is quite a nice file to work with, to be honest, in terms of color. If I go back to the frequency separation now, and then we go to our colors and tones, this is pretty cool because now I can continue painting with my mixer brush tool, and then just getting a better rotation from one color to another. And like I said, we almost did it with that first pass, okay? I'm going in these little circular motions over here, and you can see that we're blending colors better into each other. So look how that's working out. That's really, really coming down to the T here. So before and after, really working on those tonalities. And the tonalities, the basis to those skin tones or skin tonalities was based on the white balance that we started with right at the beginning. And that's why the white balance is important, okay? So this is all starting to come together. Let's go back to that other little distracting element behind Amy here. We're going to select our spot healing brush tool and always just make sure that we've got content aware set. Let me just switch off my pressure sensitivity, and I'm going to make my brush about the same size as that bumblebee. And voila, he's gone. Just like that. And you see that I'm tapping around that little area there just to blend the pixels a little bit better into each other. Okay, right, so let's get on to the next part of the process here, where we're going to start altering this hand over here because it's fallen into the shadow of the sunflower. You can see that the light's hitting this area over here on the tips of her fingers. And we've got nice illumination of Amy's face, but the illumination on Amy's hand here, and a lot of people don't realize this, is that this is obviously slightly darker. Now, let's go over to our selection tool here. We are going to keep ourselves in lasso mode, and I'm just going to draw around Amy's hand very quickly. And you'll see that the software will be able to pick up Amy's hand fairly quickly and separate it from the leaf over here. Now what we can do is very simply go over to my adjustment layers here and go and create one that's called brightness, and then pop up the brightness until it matches in with Amy's face. Here we go. Simple as that, okay? This arm over here also actually falls into that space where it's a little bit darker because obviously the light is slightly more from behind Amy, and this is on this shaded half of Amy over here. We could do the same thing here, right? Again, with our object selection tool, go around that little part of Amy's arm, and voila. Okay, oops. This time I didn't do a good selection. There we go. Okay, there we go. And again, another adjustment layer, brightness, and just brighten up a little bit there. We've got all this beautiful harmonizing editing going on here, harmonizing these skin tones, getting good colors. Now, let me see if I can work on some more of the greens in this image. Okay, so now we're going to look at colors as well. I'm going to create a hue and saturation layer, and then I'm going to go to the yellows here, or actually greens. Let's go to greens, and I'm going to ramp this all the way to the top, and you can see that's where the true greens are. Okay, that means that these areas over here fall actually more into the yellow range. Okay, remember that. So what I'm going to do is I need to capture some more of these yellows over here without bleeding into the actual yellows of the sunflowers. So I'm going to move this grouping a little bit over until I get a little bit more selected of the greeny leafy areas, the stems essentially of the sunflowers. Okay, so it seems like it's round about there. Okay, I'm going to increase this amount over here and increase that amount over there. Or bring these in closer. If you want a softer selection of those color areas, you've got to bring these 2 points in closer to each other. Okay. And you see that's a very rough selection over here. So you got to move this around until it's not so rough. It's around about there. Okay. Right about there. There we go. Now what we can do is come in and make those adjustments to those greeny yellowy areas there. Okay. So before and after, just adding a more of a greeny color to the foliage instead of the yellowy green color. Right about there. So before and after, just that little edge there. If it's too much, you can obviously just back it off a little bit. But essentially around about there. Okay, so the other way we can do this is go into the camera raw filter, and I can make adjustments again in the color mixer right here. I can go back to the greens and I can make a small adjustment here again, and I could ramp up the saturation just a tiny little bit and then bring down that luminance. There we go. And what I'm effectively doing here is actually creating even more separation of Amy from that background. Okay. Right. So let's have a look at the blue of Amy's top. And what I'm going to do again is use a simple object selection tool here and then just draw around Amy's top like that to get a nice selection of it. And it does this lovely little automatic selection. And then what we're going to do now is go back to our hue and saturation adjustment layer. And then I'm going to click the little hand tool and then click on the blue of the top here and then increase the blues over there. First of all, okay, I'm going to increase the saturation and then I'm going to change up the blue. I want it to be a little bit more of a deeper blue rather than that light cyany kind of blue. There we go. How about that? Even more dramatic. That's it. Before and after. Really getting in a little bit more blue into that, really to contrast against those lovely yellows we've got of the sunflowers. Okay, that's looking great there. Let's come into Amy's eyes here. I think I'm going to change up the eye color there. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to run the magical eyes action here. So press play. And what we're going to do is work on the sharpness inside the eye area. And I'm going to look at making a small alteration to the color of the iris. Okay. So here, iris color changer. Go over to my brush tool over here. I'm going to have a low flow on this brush over here. Let's start off with like 10%. And I've got it set by default to add blue. Okay, so let's try that out, yeah? All right, just paint inside the eye nice and neatly there. In fact, even at 10%, the blue is quite strong here, but it's as simple as bringing back the opacity until we get it to where we like. I like the blues right there. They're not too intense. Maybe I'll back it off a little bit more. There. And if you want to change the nature of that blue, you can come into this little slider over here and you can change the hue. You can make Amy's eyes brown if you want. But I'm looking for a little bit more of a navy blue to match in with her top there. And then again, I could bring up the opacity. There we go. There we go. Okay, that's about where I want it to be. Maybe just a little bit back off there. Okay. Go to the sharpness level over here, or sharpness layer rather. It says sharpen eyes. You can go in with a brush tool with white, paint onto the black mask here, and you'll sharpen up the eyes like so. Okay. And again here, the flow of the brush is quite low, so it's not too intense on the eyes. There we go. Okay. Before and after. Just adding in that little extra hint of nice sharpness to the eyes. Okay, so I'm going to flatten this Oopsie. Let's go down. Or flatten, merge. Oh, come on. Scroll down, right click, flatten image. There we go. Okay, so I missed a little area over here on Amy's finger. Let's grab that there. And as you can see, as we zoom in, you know, the pixel density isn't extreme, but for the purpose of the session, it worked out really nicely. I'm gonna tackle this little area here quickly. Staying on Amy's face here for a little bit longer than I usually would. Okay. There we go. And what I might try to do here is just come into Amy's teeth, and then we'll add in a little hue and saturation layer again here. Grab the little hand tool, drop it on Amy's teeth here, and it says yellow, and then we're going to ramp it all the way to the top here, to the lightness is 100. Look how interesting that photo is. Right, and what we'll do is we'll invert the mask, pressing Control I, and then I'm going to go with a very light brush over Amy's teeth over here at a flow of about even 5%, even 4%. Just want to whiten them up a little. Okay, that was hardly anything at all. In fact, that's too much. There we go. All right, so keeping it real, folks, keeping it real. Now, what we're going to do now is the dodge and burn part of the process here, and this is working with existing shadows and light, okay, or shadows and highlights. What we're going to do is we'll go to the burn layer first here, and now we're going to paint with light and paint with shadows, okay. So again, bringing my flow up here to about 10%, and then creating that shape and dimension into the sunflowers even in the background here, okay. I'm targeting those little shaded areas, and I'm lifting up the shadows, okay. There we go. This is now like really small detailed work over here. You can see that little dark area there, that little shaded area. You got to look at this in almost in like a 3D space sensation, okay. You're going to look at it in 3D and look at where those shadows are, look at where the highlights are, and then we're going to work on that, okay. So like between the fingers over here, for example, with that little shadow there, enhance it, give it some shape there, okay. Same between these little petals over here and the stem, okay. Go over to Amy's neck over here. There's a little dark shadow underneath the chin, dark shadow underneath the nose, okay. Zoom out, evaluate, and have a look. Is it too much? Is it too little? If it's too much, back it off. There we go. Okay, very, very simple. Now you can use these to even out skin tonalities as well. All right, so with our burn layer active, I can paint a little bit of a burn. I can darken down the cheeks there. I can darken down those little areas where there's light spots, okay. I'm not going to do it on the highlight on the edge here because that's natural. It looks nice, okay. And then of course, coming along to the side of Amy's nose here where there's that natural shadow, and just building that up, okay, pulling that all up. Again, just being very careful not to overdo it. There we go. And now we go to the dodge layer, and we look at all the parts of the image here that's got a little bit of light, and we can paint light into it. We can create those highlights. We can go into Amy's eyes over here, add in this little splash of light there. If we overlap, then it's a simple case of going back to your brush and then invert the color of the painting, of the paintbrush, and then just brush back over where you've overlapped. Super, super simple, folks. Okay. Now I'll create a little bit more light on the shoulders of Amy's top over here. And I might just brighten up the hand. Okay, so let's go back here. Shoulder. Come on. There we go. Shoulder over there. Create a little bit more light on the shoulder there. More light in the face if you want to. Go to the top ends over here. Just paint it with a little bit of light. Tiny little bit. Not much, folks. This is about keeping it nice and easy going. We don't want to overdo this process. Go back to the burn here in these little darker areas. You can darken them up with the burn. You can come into this little area over here where those greens are and darken those up as well. So look how that is progressing, folks. From a simple D70s 6 megapixel image, okay? There's that little light spot over there. We can either go in and use our patch tool or spot hitting brush. I use a combo. Let's try and backspace and see if a content aware fill will be better there. Yeah, there we go. Content aware did the job just fine. And we can top this off with a camera raw filter, and we can go make a couple of little adjustments there to have those little finishing touches. Bringing up the shadows or dropping the shadows. This is where we could warm it up a little bit more and have that as a final image. Okay, let's put that back into Lightroom and see what the results are like. So yes. You don't want to go no. You're like, oh my God, I just worked 2 hours on the image and you just chucked it away. Right, let's have a look here. This is still saving over, I guess. There we go. Okay, so before and after. Let's compare these two puppies side by side and look at what we've got there, folks. We've really evened out the inconsistent skin tones of Amy's face there because she was obviously quite tanned, so it was a bit blotchy, but we fixed that all up. We corrected the greeny yellow background over there. We've made it more green and more lively, and obviously taken away some of the minute distracting elements. And again, this is going back to the way I shoot. I'm trying to minimize those distractions at shoot level. Okay, that's very important, folks. That's forming some of the fundamentals, those 3 fundamentals that I spoke about earlier. And there you have it, folks. So this was Amy in the sunflowers. I hope you enjoyed this very thorough tutorial today. I've taken you from using old gear right out on location. You've seen where I shoot, how I act, how I interact with Amy, how we got those shots, changing between the 50mm and the 80 to 200, and then of course, you know, looking at those results and then obviously editing this particular image. Again, thank you very much, folks, and we'll see you in the next session. Cheers for now.